Hello and welcome to the Encounter Mercy podcast. I'm Vince Dragone. I have with me Father Andy Boyd, and we also have a special guest today, AJ Gedney from Florence, Kentucky, who is a seminarian at Saint Vincent Seminary in Latrobe. How's it going, AJ?
Guys, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell? Well, why don't you tell us just a brief little bit about yourself? We're going to dive in. This whole episode is going to be about you, but let's just 30 seconds. Tell us about AJ.
Yeah, I am a seminarian for the Diocese of Covington, Kentucky, which is the northern diocese in Kentucky. I am in third theology at Saint Vincent Seminary in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. In a past life, as an engineer, as I'll talk about later. But I have a little under a year to my diaconate ordination, and I'll be ordained about a year and a couple of months after that.
Fantastic. So, Father Andy, what's new with you?
Well, with this change in weather, it's been a constant 75, 80 degrees here in Meadville.
Beautiful.
It's been great. And I thought I would do a little bit of gardening. And then, of course, it's that perfect time for everything to start blooming. And then the past 3 days, I think I've just been medicating myself with allergy meds to the point where it's like, who are you people? Where am I? Because of this darn pollen. So I'm amazed right now. I'm jinxing myself because I feel pretty good right now. Could be all the pills I've been taking, but I'm just grateful that soon I'll be able to sit out on the deck, hopefully once everything blooms, and just be able to enjoy this weather because I'm tired of sitting in the house.
Yeah, I think we all are, especially after all these lockdowns and such.
How about you, Vince? What's been going on with you?
Not a whole lot different. Been doing a lot more outside. Been doing some gardening. I planted some hops because I make beer, so I planted hops for the first time.
That's cool.
So we'll see if I kill them. I don't know. I planted them right before the last frost, which was you're supposed to wait till after the last frost is done, but I thought it was. So I planted them, and then the next day it frosted. So I haven't seen them come out of the ground yet, but it's also a little too early for that. So we'll see. I hope I get some because the two biggest cost drivers in home brewing are your hops and your yeast, and you can kind of control both of those by growing your own hops and then harvesting your own yeast off of beers that you've already made. So that's just one more step in trying to save money. And also,
what kind of hops are you growing?
So I'm growing Centennial because you can use that in just about everything.
Cool.
I thought about doing some like Magnums or Chinook and stuff, but I was like, then I'll kind of be limited on the kind of beers that I can make with that. So Centennial, I think it's a good backbone hop for just about any style of beer for the most part.
I feel like our first episode or two, you had some really good beer.
Yeah, that was the lager versus the ale with the same recipe. So I brewed 10 gallons of beer, and then I lagered 5 gallons, and then with lager yeast in cold temperatures, and then I pitched ale yeast in regular normal temperatures, and then compared them side by side. And it was just crazy what just yeast and fermentation temperature will do to a beer because they're totally different beers.
Yeah.
Same recipe, same.
I look forward to trying this new beer.
I still found some of the ale stuff that I had. So
really?
Yeah, in my I have an old chest freezer that I turned into a kegerator. Homebrewers call it a keezer, and I forgot I still have like 3 gallons in that keg. So I had the CO2 disconnected, so it lost a little bit of carbonation, but I'm carboning it back up, and it tastes just the same as it did 6 months ago. So I don't know. I guess we'll have more beer.
Hopefully once this lockdown ends completely, or whatever, we can get back to recording in your basement or maybe even outside like we were talking about, and I can actually get some of that beer.
Yeah, well, I have an apple ale going on right now. It's going to be a lot better than Red's apple ale for sure. It's going to be like legit. And then it's
obviously not what you're drinking now. So just if anybody's watching the video, no, that's red wine.
This is the first wine I ever made 3 years ago. This is a Merlot that I made, and I haven't had it in probably a year, and because I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I just cracked it open tonight with dinner because we had a good dinner that would go with Merlot, and it aged nicely over the last year. It's actually very enjoyable.
Nice.
It's funny you mentioned that you make wine because one of my classmates here in the diocese he started brewing beer earlier this semester, and he graduated from a 1-gallon kit to a 5-gallon kit, and he just gave me his 1-gallon kit. So that's
So-
something I kind of want to try because I mean I
so-
have a chemical engineering background,
Oh,
and I
dude,
also
you
very much enjoy beer.
you can
So I
geek
thought
out.
I'd just marry those two loves.
Yeah. And, and you can take it as far as you want. You know, if you can really geek out into it, and I consider myself, I'm not even like at the extreme. Like you go in the home brewing forums, and like people are like literally making everything that they use, equipment wise and everything. I'm not quite there because I don't have the budget. Otherwise, I would. But I am working on an electric home brewery for the basement because it's cold 8 months out of the year here, and I hate doing it in the
We're
garage.
gonna, well, I understand. Well, we're gonna have to have an episode just on beer. I think we're gonna have
Yeah,
to like
definitely.
But
I'm
hopefully
cool
we
with
can
that.
do that around the campfire in the backyard.
Yeah, campfire, beer, cigars, whiskey, whatever.
Sounds like a good night to me.
Yeah. So, AJ, why don't you tell us a little bit more about how you ended up in the seminary? Because you're an
Yeah, 'cause
engineer.
you're-
So why would
yeah, and
why
your
would
vocation
anybody
story,
in their right
your
mind?
vocation story is completely different than mine.
Yeah, I just don't understand why anybody in their right mind would drop being an engineer, probably making buku bucks, lots of money, doing something really cool, to going into the seminary. I mean, which is also
Yeah.
cool. But this is just from a generalization. Why would you even do that?
Yeah, it's funny because people will ask me, oh, how'd you end up trying to become a priest? Did you not like your job? And I always say, no, quite the opposite. Loved my job. But my vocation story starts about a year before then. So I just graduated college. I went to the University of Cincinnati, and I got my bachelor's in chemical engineering. And in that time, I did lots of co-ops. So I'm building my resume. I'm figuring out what industry do I want to work in. Because I'd worked in like corporate, manufacturing, research and development, and my last co-op that I did was in R&D for a wire and cable manufacturer in Indianapolis. So I spent my last co-op semester there, loved it, and then ended up getting a job there about the week after I graduated from college. They gave me a call saying, "Yep, we want you to come work for us. Everything's set." And then so a couple of days later, I go to the ordination of a guy I went to high school with. And he was kind of the first priest I had known before he was a priest. Because, I thought growing up, how priests were made is you go to seminary and then out comes this like grumpy old man. Because those were like a lot of the priests I knew growing up. So I thought, oh, they just come out grumpy old men. But I knew Eric in high school, and I knew his family, and I knew his brother. So it was cool seeing him kind of go through seminary. So go to his ordination, go to his first mass. And then the party after his first mass was at his parents' house. And I sit down at a table with some food. There's Father Eric, a couple friends, and a seminarian. So the seminarian says, "Hi, I'm Joey," and immediately asks me, "Have you ever thought about going to seminary?" And I try to give him the answer, you give old church ladies, when they say, "Oh, you should be a priest." Because I'd grown up doing things in church. And so they asked me that. So I just say, "No, my plan's to be an engineer." So I tried to do that. And Joey didn't take the bait. So he asked again, "No, like, well, come on, like you're Catholic, you're male, you're into your faith. Like, why haven't you thought about seminary?" And then so he says, you test out marriage by dating to see if you're meant to get married. So how could you test out priesthood if you don't go to seminary? And I thought, dang it, he's using logic. Like, that makes sense. I can't run from that.
This fits my image of Joey.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Just he latches on and doesn't let go. So the party goes on, and every time he'd see me, he'd like ask me again, like, "Priesthood, what do you think? What do you think?" So now eventually, hours later, I'm helping the family clean up, and he comes to me and he's like, "Okay, AJ, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna find the vocation director on Facebook. You're gonna friend him. You're gonna get lunch with him. You're gonna talk about seminary." At this point, I'm kind of fed up. So I think to myself, okay, what can I tell him to get him to let go? So I think of some reasons in my head of why I couldn't drop everything and go to seminary. Like, I just graduated from college. I had student loans to pay back. I was finally moving out of my parents' house. I signed a 1-year apartment lease. I have a job doing what I want to do, where I want to do it. But when I was about to give him one of these reasons, I hesitated and I thought, oh, he's going to tear me apart. Like, he's not going to buy any of this. And then I reflected and thought, are these reasons or excuses? So I end up moving to Indianapolis, starting my job a couple months, and it's great. The projects I'm working on are fun. I love my coworkers. The pay is good. I joined a parish. Everything is great about living in Indianapolis. So I come home for a wedding and of a high school friend, and I had known that she was very religious, very devout, even in high school. And people had known that she visited some convents and religious orders. She was open to the celibate vocation, but so she learns God that's not God's will for her, and so she was engaged. Well, in the homily, I learned that the gentleman she was marrying had been in seminary and discerned that God is calling him to marriage. So I thought to myself, wow, like they know what God wants for them because they asked him. And then like a lightning bolt came down and hit me, and I thought, oh no, like I never asked God what I should do. Like high school and college is always, oh, be an engineer, build up your resume, increase your interviewing skills, get a job. And I never asked God, like, well, do you want me to be an engineer? And then that priesthood question like resurfaced in my head. So at the reception at the wedding, I see a priest friend of mine who was at the wedding, and I'm waiting the last minute for him to leave because I thought, oh my gosh, I have to like ask him how to discern a vocation. But I was afraid if I told him with people around, he'd like pull out a cowbell and be like, "Hey, AJ wants to be a priest." So I asked him afterwards when he's leaving. I said, "Like, Father, like, what do I do?" I was at a loss for words. I was kind of confused. And he said, "Talk to a vocation director. So talk to the one here in Covington, or you can talk to the one in Indianapolis where you are." So I did that. So scheduled a meeting with the vocations director for the Archdiocese of Indianapolis, and we had a couple dinners. And he just answered all the questions I had because I had so many fears. How do I quit my job? How do I move out of my apartment? What will my parents think? Who pays for seminary? How long does it take? One concern was, well, I didn't enter after high school. Did I do something wrong? Do I have to like go back to college? So he answered a lot of those questions. And then whenever I came back home to visit my parents, I'd meet with a vocation director for here. And again, just more questions answered. And then so finally it came time that, well, I wanted to visit a seminary since I'd never been. So I go with a group of guys from here in Covington, and we went to one of the seminaries that they send to, which is Josephinum in Columbus. And it was great because I met guys just like me. Guys had science backgrounds, guys who had engineering backgrounds, and I learned about there's a program you get into if you already have a bachelor's. It's called pre-theology. So you just do your philosophy, and then you hop in and do your 4 years of theology. And then I realized, you know what? I can go to seminary. I think this is something I can do. Because again, like none of my coworkers know. My parents are kind of still like trying to figure things out if they want me to do this or not. None of my friends know. And then so I started applying to the diocese because I decided, well, I think I should come back home to Covington, kind of where my faith was raised, so I can give back that faith to the people. So then I visited Saint Vincent in Latrobe, where I currently go, and Father Andy's alma mater. And then it was just a really cool experience there because I met another priest friend of mine, and I learned that he was doing ministry in the college, like he was doing campus ministry. And I thought that was really cool because at that time with my job in Indianapolis, I was super involved with my parish doing music ministry and youth ministry and young adult things. And I thought it was really neat that if I had the chance, I could go to seminary, improve myself as a person, and also like still minister and give to the community. So then I applied to St. Vincent as well. And then so comes crunch time. So it's the day I'd have to put in my 2 weeks if I want to quit. And I haven't heard back from the Diocese of Covington yet. I'm talking to the priest who is going through my application. He says, things look great. You've done everything. You've done all your testing. You've given us all your documentation. He said, it looks pretty good. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. Looks pretty good isn't definitive enough for me to quit my engineering job.
Especially as an
white.
Engineer.
Yeah, exactly. Like the world works differently here, in the engineering world, it's cut or dry, yes or no. So, but in hindsight, I realized that God was asking me to take a leap of faith. And I think that if I quit my job and it wasn't God's will that I become a priest, he wouldn't go like, ha ha ha, I made you quit your job. Like, good luck.
Yeah, now you're going to be homeless.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I thought, well, if this is truly a good thing, then I'm going to do it now. I'm not going to wait another year. I'm going to do it now. I can always come back to this company. They said they'd keep a place open for me for a little bit. I got the phone number of some guys who are higher up. saying, well, if we're not here, I want you to work for me. So I had that security on that end that, well, if I did make a mistake somehow, I can come back. But I remember putting in my 2 weeks notice, and then my last day at my job was a Friday, and then that Monday I went on the Diocese Seminary retreat, and that was 4 years ago, and it's been an awesome ride. I remember even in the first semester, it was very rigorous, very difficult, but very fruitful. I remember talking to one of the spiritual directors on campus, and I said, Father, I'm concerned that I'm going to change so much in seminary that I'm going to get home to my friends and they're not going to like know who I am or recognize me. Like, I'm afraid of this change. And he said, AJ, you are more AJ now than you were before you joined seminary. And you'll be even more AJ when you're ordained a priest. And I realize it's because I'm becoming who God created me to be. Like, he may not have created me to be a dad or a biological father or to be a husband, but that he created me for this life of celibacy, for the priesthood. And that the more I work on myself and on my flaws, and the more that I grow in my relationship with him, the closer I get to that age that he created me to be. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. It's 4 years ago.
Fantastic.
And whenever I tell like high schoolers a story, I always think like, "Boy, I'll give seminary a shot." And then the joke is like, "Well, it's been 4 years and it's still good." And then no one laughs, but that's how I usually end it.
So, well, before I forget, I don't want to sidetrack us too much, but you mentioned music ministry. So, what instruments do you play?
Piano, guitar, bass,
Nice.
drums. So anything that's involved in like a worship band or a rock band. And then I play a bunch of brass I learned in high school and college.
Cool. Yeah,
Did you do jazz? Didn't you say? Or
Oh yes, at UC, was a part of the marching band. We had a little jazz band, and so I played electric bass, and they got an upright bass, and I learned how to play that.
Father Andy, can you turn your mic up a little bit?
Oh yeah, sorry. I could also just eat it too if I need to.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about, because like I miss playing my saxophone and all that, and I would never want to like tell anybody, oh yeah, you'll never be able to have time to do your hobbies, because obviously like this podcast is truly a hobby. I'm not getting paid for it. It's not a part of my parish work, but I just don't take the time to pull out my saxophone and play it. And I really probably should.
Just got to do it.
In any
Saxophone's
event,
nice. Okay. Well, yeah, anyhow, I was just curious, but, going back to, when you were asking questions to the vocations director about like, so how do I leave my job? How do I handle, student loans and all this stuff? Like, what were some of the answers that he gave you that convinced you that, yeah, I'm going to take the next step?
So I learned that with the Diocese of Covington, if you enter into pre-theology, again, so a guy's usually older, maybe he had a job, for sure a college degree, that they'll foot the bill for your education, right? So it's totally paid for. Even if you try it out for a year or two and leave, they'd still foot the bill. So that kind of gave me the freedom that, okay, I won't be incurring more debt, because I did have student loans, but since I am again in higher education, they've deferred.
Makes
so
sense.
they'll be frozen until I graduate. Then I think, like it happened in undergrad, I have like a 6-month grace period, things like that.
So what would you say to like the guy that's in your shoes, that was in your shoes, 4 years ago, that, is in the workplace right now and is thinking about going into the priesthood, but isn't quite sure, should they take that leap of faith? What's the biggest piece of advice that you would give to somebody that was in your position 4 years ago?
Do it now. Don't wait, because I was reading books on vocation stories and priests and discernment, and I kept reading these stories of priests that regretted not entering seminary earlier when they heard the call. So it's like, oh, I waited 10 years before I entered, or like I waited this long. So I thought, this is really a good thing. This is truly God's will, and this is what He wants for me, then I'm gonna do it now. And then that also, like, God is never outdone in His graciousness and His gratitude. So, if money is going to be an issue, you're giving your life to Him, He's going to give you so much more back, so that, you're not going to regret quitting a job or, giving up a paycheck, because God's going to pour out so much grace on you. But I know that's kind of hard to think about, if you're working full time as an engineer, like finances, that's like something you think about a lot, paying taxes, retirements and pensions and things like that. Yeah, that's a good question, because that was kind of at the top of my list when I was discerning. It's like, okay, who pays for this? Things like that.
So
Yeah, because it's another expense that, and as you said, having student loans, that's going into that and having to take on another expense, and how is that going to work? I mean, yeah, it would be deferred, but in the same breath, it's like, okay, let's just keep adding on more financial issues.
Yep. I'll be paying off student loans for the rest of my life.
Me too, but
Yeah, and it's one of those things too. It was interesting talking to my parents about this, because they're obviously very concerned about my debt and my loans. But for me, is I just had this peace, like it'll be okay. I'll make it work. I don't think God would punish me for having gone to college. Like,
Right.
here, I'm going to burden you with these loans. Like, good luck. So, like, God is very gracious, and I'm not worried about paying off my loans. It'll happen. Might take a while, but it'll get done.
now, remind me, do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have a younger sister, only
Younger
sibling.
sister. When you told mom and dad that you were going to start in the seminary, what was their reaction?
They were not supportive at first. Um, I think, as I've learned now, because now they're totally on board and they cannot be more supportive, um, which I'm immensely blessed for that. But I think in the beginning, it was just maybe a lack of knowledge. It was kind of scary and unknown.
Yeah.
And bottom line, they wanted me to be happy. So to them, this radical change of life, this quitting of a secure job, they wanted to make sure that I wasn't making a decision that I'd regret. And rightfully so. So I had to do a little work to convince them. And then, just like kind of how I rejected that initial call to my vocation to seminary, they had to wrestle with it too and make it their own. So I
Yeah.
realized that, because I thought, oh, what priests can I have them talk to? What book will like touch their heart to convince them? And I realized that it's between them and God. And that as much as I wanted to convince them, it would really just be the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, and the main reason why I kind of asked that is because who I don't remember who I was talking to recently, but they were asking me about it was a young person in my parish who is himself considering the seminary, and he's a junior in high school, and he's thinking about entering the seminary, and he said, like, what happened when you told your parents? Same thing, mom and dad were not supportive of it, and so it's the as time goes on, like in our time in seminary, I think especially once you get to major seminary, and the fact that you were starting at Saint Vincent's immediately, it's a completely different atmosphere than college seminary. But it was finally in those last 4 years of my seminary formation, the fraternity that we had at Saint Vincent's, and just everything with that experience, I think really changed my parents as well. So, it's that process. So if anybody's listening to this thinking, well, my parents already told me no, it doesn't. First off, it's not their decision. It's
Mm-hmm.
yours. And then the second thing is that they'll come around to it if it's God's will.
Yeah, once and I've heard it from many priests who had the same issue or the same problem that happened with them, is once your parents see you happy, then it's right as rain. Um,
Yeah.
and I see it now, especially a lot of my friends and peers are getting married and having kids. Is I see how much they love their kids, and I realized it was that same love my parents had for me that they wanted to prevent me. Vince, like you said, like, I don't know, all of a sudden I'm homeless in Indianapolis for some reason, like something went wrong. They're just trying to prevent that from happening.
Yeah. Yeah. What about your sister?
Sister, I think she was kind of indifferent at that time. But I think also she had a different kind of life path, because she did one semester of college and then dropped out and entered the military
Okay.
with the help. My mom was on board, but in both stories, my mom gets on board first before my dad. So I
That
think,
sounds accurate.
yeah, right. She was, yeah, but it worked out very well for her. But of course, at the beginning, she had to convince my mom, and my dad was not like, well, what's going on? But it ended up being the right thing for her. So I think she kind of got where I was coming from, because she had another like non-typical career path.
Makes sense. So, so you said you're coming up on being ordained a deacon, right? So transitional deacon. That's gonna be next year.
Yes,
And
March.
So, seeing as we've never covered this on the podcast ever before, at least I don't think. Do you want to give us kind of like a basic, like, okay, you enter seminary. Well, you're doing it from a little different, already having a bachelor's degree, but take us through the steps, and then like you become a deacon. So, like, what does that even mean? And then how long until you become a priest? Why don't you walk us through that real quick for, those who don't know. Like there was, just
Yeah.
before we started recording, I was at, I was finding out so many different things about the seminary that I had no idea, especially like Saint Vincent's. I didn't know that the college and the seminary were separate. I thought they were the same. So yeah, why don't you run us through, what it's like to be in seminary and what the process is before they spit you out as a priest.
Yeah. So if I would have entered after high school, I would enter 4 years of college or minor seminary. And then in there, you'd get a bachelor's in philosophy. So you take obviously philosophy classes, but also your gen eds, math, science, literature, language, things like that. Now, I thought when I was entering, I thought, ooh, I already have gen eds from college. Will those take? Because I wouldn't want to go to another 4 years of college. So then they have a program called pre-theology. So that's 2 years, and it's just philosophy. So usually, I think most always, your credits will transfer over. So they see that I've taken all my gen eds, my math, science, literature, language, things like that. So I did 2 years of philosophy, and then the next 4 years, that's where everyone's on the same page.
I'm going to stop you there. 2 years of philosophy. That was it. You just took philosophy, like a deep dive into it. Wow.
Yeah.
Did you end up getting a degree in philosophy?
No, I didn't.
No, I didn't think so. So, because that's the biggest difference is that if you're coming in with a bachelor's degree, like AJ came in with the degree in
chemical engineering.
Thank you. My brain just completely evaporated.
The best kind of engineering.
A bachelor's degree, whereas I started in college seminary and I got my bachelor's degree during that. Mine ended up being in philosophy, not by choice, but because it was the easiest at Gannon. So
sure.
AJ didn't finish with a bachelor's degree after 2 years in philosophy. It was just the prereqs, getting the prereqs out of the way, and then starting seminary.
So yeah,
but we have the same amount of classes in philosophy.
My biggest thing is like I'm trying to teach myself philosophy. I'm trying to use the internet to teach me philosophy, and like my eyes glaze over after like 10 minutes. I can't imagine doing 2 years of just like submersed in philosophy. It's amazing. I love philosophy. I think it's beautiful.
If I remember from a previous podcast, you're an engineer as well, right?
So I'm not an engineer by education. I'm just in charge of engineers. But I basically just I went through the leadership side of things just to be able to get them through. So I understand concepts. I'm not an engineer, but
so maybe you'll have an easier time with philosophy because those 2 years were very rigorous. It was my cross to bear because here I'm in the engineering world, numbers, data, Microsoft Excel, black and white, and then philosophy is the gray in the middle. I remember my first philosophy class, ancient philosophy, talking about Aristotle, Plato, and a college student raises her hand and she says, "Professor, I have this idea about what we're talking about. Do you think Plato would agree with my idea?" And he goes, "Well, I'm like shaking my desk saying, say yes or no. And he goes, maybe. Yeah, sure." I was like going to lose my mind because I'm coming from, engineering background where it's, say yes or no, this product work.
I'm that guy.
Yes or no.
I'm that guy because I'm always pushing my guys. Hey, can we just make this work? Can you kind of fudge this? And they're like, no, we can't.
Can we just ballpark this? Like, no.
1 always equals 2. You cannot get 3 out of it. It doesn't matter how hard you convince the 1, it's a 2.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's good because I see philosophy now as like another tool to look at the world. So I can look at it, objectively as an engineer, but then I can kind of like abstract and think about bigger pictures like humanity in general, or knowledge in general, or the universe, or even you take a philosophy class called metaphysics. It's philosophy of being and existence.
I think that's the most, I find that the most fascinating out of all the different philosophy disciplines.
Me too.
I'm not enough. I don't know. I don't even know enough to be dangerous. I just know enough that I know that I like it better than all the other ones. But anyway, I'm sorry to derail you there. So you deep dive 2 years in philosophy, which is just crazy. And then you go into the theology. So where do we leave off? And then you become a deacon.
4 years of theology. And then at the end of your 3rd year, my diocese kind of does the last semester of your 3rd year. But after your 3rd year, ordained a deacon.
So what's the difference between a transitional deacon and a permanent deacon?
Sacramentally, ontologically, nothing. So deacons in general, they can baptize, They can proclaim the gospel, preach, um, and participate in the mass a little more, like at the altar. But the only part in the distinction is saying, well, one's going to go on to be a priest, whereas one could be already like a married man with a family. He's going to stay at deacon, like that's his end goal. Whereas if you'd say, oh, my friend so and so is a transitional deacon, you'd say, oh, he's in seminary and he's going to be a priest.
Got it.
Yeah, and the key there is the word before deacon. It kind of defines it in and of itself. If anybody's questioning,
Sure.
permanent,
Yeah, definitely.
permanency. Yeah. So I was a transitional deacon. As much as they kept trying to make me a permanent deacon for a year, I was a transitional deacon. There was no way on God's green earth was I staying as a deacon. Because that's the other thing, and you might want to talk about this more, AJ. But when you are ordained a deacon, if you are being ordained a deacon and you are not married, you have to promise celibacy immediately at that point. Celibacy, the definition of celibacy is that you will not get married. There's the key. It's kind of important later on, but you're not going to get married, that you're going to remain celibate. And so, if I was becoming a deacon and then I at that point I couldn't get married. So even if I got, it's just not worth it. So no, I was never a permanent deacon. AJ will never be a permanent deacon. He will be a transitional. AJ, talk a little bit about the what I always coined as the 5 steps of major seminary sacramentally. It's not even sacramental in some areas, like talking about candidacy and
Oh
acolyte
yeah,
and lector.
yeah. So back in the day, pre-Vatican II, there were all these like individual 8 little steps up to priest. Ending with being ordained a subdeacon, deacon, priest. So those are kind of formed into what we have now are these what men are instituted into. So candidacy, at least for my diocese, is done first theology. It is an official recognition that this man is a candidate for the priesthood. Like he's done some studies, and it's for us, it's within a mass. A public mass is you go before the bishop, you answer some questions, akin to an ordination in a sense. I do with the help of God, and then he gives you a surplice, which is a vestment that goes over the cassock for mass for
That's
seminarians and priests.
your diocese. Not every diocese does that, but it does. It harkens back to pre-Vatican II rituals, which are beautiful. But in any event, candidacy, you're going and you're claiming to the world that you plan on doing this.
Yep. And then so after that, in your first theology, you're instituted as a lector. Now, people ask me, oh, the little old lady, Marianne, my aunt, well, she's a lector. It's like, technically, so pastors can give permission for people to be like extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion, lectors, but it's kind of in the parish. Whereas for the seminarian, it's a universal thing that he could go anywhere and he technically would have precedence to read. Like, oh, we have a seminarian here; he's a lector. And again, and these ceremonies can be done, liturgically, like in mass or in liturgy of the hours. But for that one, you go in front of the bishop, you kneel down, and you hold you hold a lectionary, and he says a prayer, you answer some promises, and then after that is acolyte, right? And this is like right below deacon. As far as a layperson can go, this is as much as they can do. So as an acolyte, I can serve at mass, again officially. You can distribute Holy Communion. You can expose and repose the Blessed Sacrament for adoration. And all of these steps get the seminarian closer to the altar.
And there's
So
one more
first,
thing there's one more thing an acolyte can do after mass
oh,
when you're serving.
he
Yeah,
can purify the vessels. So if you've seen
and
the
that's kind of
priest, or he can
important.
do that.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because in our parishes mostly you don't see the acolyte do that. You see the priest putting the water in after communion into the chalice and cleaning out all of the vessels, or the deacon if there's a deacon there. So as an acolyte though is when a man can start doing that, and that's a key distinction too as well. These are not open to women. These minor orders, as they used to be called, but now ministries, are meant for men studying to be priests.
Never knew
Yep,
that.
and it is very cool because the Vatican II documents that kind of spell out these things just talk about this process of a man is in the pews, then now he can get closer to the altar. He's a lector, and he gets even closer. He can even touch and distribute and expose the Blessed Sacrament. And it's great because as you get closer, you can see more. I've noticed that. I remember the first time I purified vessels at my summer assignment parish. The deacon was very gracious. He said, "Oh, you're an acolyte. Do you want to purify?" I said, "Sure." I saw him do it 1,000 times, and finally I get there, and I was like, "Oh wow, he made this look a lot easier." I'm like, "Where does the water go?" Or like, "When do I say the prayer?" So then you get good at that. So it kind of prepares you for these steps up to priesthood.
And then after Acolyte, what's the that's because you're an Acolyte now, and you're getting ready, as you said, to become a transitional deacon. So what's the major difference there between Acolyte and transitional deacon?
So then a deacon, one thing, this is very technical, he's then an ordinary minister of Holy Communion. So it's not extraordinary. He is automatically always allowed, no matter what, he and the celebrant can distribute communion. But then the deacon can start administering sacraments. Like I said, he can baptize, he can witness vows at a marriage, and then he can preach at Mass, and he can proclaim the gospel.
Yeah, and all of those things obviously come with permission from the pastor. It's all this canon law stuff. We need Father Dan Hoffman back on to talk about canon law, which I'm sure you're enjoying a lot, AJ.
I did like it.
I enjoyed it, honestly. I
See,
didn't
it's
mind
black
it.
and white. That's why he would like it.
It's very
Yes.
black and white.
Yes.
Yeah,
Do any of you
yeah.
guys listen to CNA Editor's Desk podcast?
Off and on.
It's really good. There's basically the two editors of CNA are canon lawyers, and they go back and forth on arguing points over just like lawyers do. Any lawyers do, arguing the different points of the law. They do the same thing, and it's really cool actually. But anyhow,
Yeah. Yeah, and so with the transitional deacon or permanent deacon, with the ordination of a deacon is when we first see a transition in the indelible mark placed upon the soul. So like with baptism, you receive an indelible mark. Well, at ordination, you receive a different indelible mark, and then it continues to grow from there. So as AJ will be ordained in less than a year now, how exciting.
I know.
You'll be ordained a deacon, so you'll have a different indelible mark placed on you, and then once you're ordained a priest, it continues to grow, just like I am. I have a different indelible mark as well as a priest, so it's obviously nothing other than if I were wearing my clothes, my clericals, but of course it was a relaxing day today, other than the sniffles from the allergies. Um, you know, Other than that, there's no outward sign really showing that there's a change, but it's something that God sees. And it's important that we remember this. So after you're ordained a deacon, how long is it until you become a priest?
It'll be about a year and 2 months.
Yeah.
So diaconate in my diocese is usually done the day before Palm Sunday. So then you have a Holy Week as a deacon, and you'll have an additional Holy Week the next year. And then priestly ordinations happen around this time in May. So we just had one a couple days ago on Saturday.
Yeah. So it's kind of fascinating. Um, in one way, it's good that you guys get 2 years as a deacon for the Easter Vigil and stuff like that, because that is really the deacon's role in the Easter Vigil and all of the Triduum services is extremely important. And so having that experience as a deacon twice and then taking that into priesthood it really makes a big difference.
Yeah, I'm excited to sing the Exultet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so what's the?
So
Go ahead, Andy.
go ahead. No. I insist.
No, because I'm about to. I'm doing a transition point here. So if you got something,
I was essentially going to do the same thing.
oh well, let's start with yours.
What I was going to say is if someone, because you already said someone in your shoes was thinking about it, you would just say go for it, don't wait. What about someone who is like they're on the fence and they're about to pull the trigger and say, yeah, I'm going to do it, but they're not 100% on board because it's still not an easy thing, right? So it's not 100% easy. What kind of like encouragement other than just do it would you suggest? Someone who has been now in seminary for 4 years, 2 years of major, and headed off to get ordained here soon.
It's funny. I just thought of the Shia LaBeouf meme, like just do it,
Do it. That's exactly what came to my mind as
and
well.
it's. I know. It's. I can make it a little more nuanced than that. I think one thing I'd tell people, and that I'd read in some books, and even encountered priests who felt this way, is you'll never feel like you're completely ready to go to seminary. Right? It's like, oh, no, I need to take care of this one sin. Oh no, I need to increase this part of my prayer life. Oh, I need to take care of this. Sure, there's some prep you can do, but one, you'll never feel like you're ready. And then two, that's the point of seminary, is it's okay you come in, uh, with some spots on your soul. That's the point of seminary, is to work on those, to cultivate a love for the church and the sacraments. And so things that you have trouble with, well, guess what? You might meet guys in seminary that have the same problems. And then so it's there that you can really work on it. Because I know you can discern outside of seminary, but it's just very difficult. So really the best place to do it is there. You're kind of cut off from the rest of the world you knew, and you're surrounded by guys who are doing the exact same thing. So to that guy who feels like he's just not ready, yeah, well, no one will ever feel super intensely worthy or ready for seminary, but that's the point of it.
And I would say if you do, you're probably prideful, and that's probably something you got to
Yes.
work on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always been told, if you meet a guy in seminary and he said, "I am for sure, definitely going to become a priest," then he might not be a good candidate, because the point is discernment, like constant discernment. Like for me, I try to wake up every day and I think, okay, God, are you still calling me to be a priest? And at this point, it's like, if you're not, you got to tell me soon. But it's constantly just asking God and listening for the call. So yeah, like, you're totally right. There shouldn't be this pride, like, oh, I know God's will definitively.
So what are the things that you're looking forward to once, or if I should say, you become a priest, which I have no doubt that you probably will be. But what are some things that you look forward to, after that day comes? You have your parish, or you're doing what Father Andy does as a I can never pronounce it, parochial vicar. What is it that you want to do there? That you're really any major accomplishments that you want to have? Like you're going to be eager to make a change, to do something. What is it?
I'm eager to serve the people, and administer the sacraments. Because I mean, on one side, I spend 9 months of every year 300 miles away from the people I know and love. So I love the summers here because I get to be with the people. And that's why I'm ordained. That's why I will be ordained. The priest is not ordained for himself; he's ordained for the people and for service of the people. So I'm just really excited to administer the sacraments, and to kind of translate all this theology that I've learned into language that hopefully will touch people. Because as Father Andy will tell you, we learned some pretty high level stuff about the sacraments, Christology, Scripture.
Sure.
That if you just unload on someone in the pews, their head would explode.
That would be
So
that would be like my wife, whenever I first came back to the faith through apologetics, and me saying, this is the reason why we do this. This is that. And she's like, stop.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to, kind of take all this knowledge, digest it, and then give it to people in a way that they can kind of understand it. Because I've learned some truly beautiful things about the faith that I think every Catholic should know and appreciate. There's that. And then, of course, celebrate the Holy Mass.
Mm-hmm.
That's still kind of unfathomable to me that I'll be able to do that one day. And I think just draw people closer to God. Hopefully, that's kind of really all I want. I don't need to be an incredible, amazing, famous priest. I just want to be a good priest.
Well, I think you already not that you're going to be, and I don't think we're incredibly famous either, but I think you have a job right here. If you're free, you can always find. We'll have just like the what is it, Catholic Stuff You Should Know guys. They have 2 teams.
Yeah, we should. I definitely want to expand this and have more people. Not to diminish my workload, because this is fun, but just to have more interesting topics, more different types of conversations than just what Father Andy and I can do. This
People
has been
can only listen to me for a little bit, you know. Like they have to hear me on Sundays. Right now, of course, they're stuck hearing me online every day, but
Yeah, I'm already at my limit.
Yeah. Like I think we're gonna have to we should just end the show right now because everybody's sick and tired of
So,
listening to me.
I have an idea. So, here's what I think you should do once you become a priest. So you've already mentioned you have an interest in home brewing. So you become really good at that. And then you start a ministry at your whatever parish that you're at, and you get a bunch of guys and girls to learn how to make beer. And you guys do that on the weekends and stuff while you're, while it's like a Bible study or whatever it is. And then you have good beer that you can drink and brew and also, be able to form, like just, you bring people together. I think that's something you should try to do. You being a chemical engineer, you can learn a whole lot about it, and you can become like an expert in it, and really be able to teach people. It'd be really cool.
I think Vince is looking for some more free beer.
And then I'll come down, to Kentucky, and we'll do that. I think that'd be cool.
I have a story about my friend who made beer in the seminary. So he cooks it in our little kitchen. He makes it, ferments it in his room. It's bottled. It's good to go. But before we had a deacon friend of ours, one of our diocesan brothers. He came to our room and blessed the beer. But it was a very seminarian thing. I mean, Father Andy will get this. So we're in my room, cassock, surplice. Here's my friend, cassock, surplice, stole, beretta. He has the old book of blessings. He blesses salt, makes the holy water, then uses that to bless the beer, and then we had the beer.
How cool!
It was super neat because we thought, oh wait, our friend's a deacon. He can bless things now. Let's have him do that.
Yeah, and there's a real prayer for blessing of beer. It's a pretty big
bless
deal.
This creature beer.
Yep. It's something that the monastics were very much about because, well, they made beer. What else are you going to do? You sit around all day alone. You got to drink at some point. I mean, not like we're doing now, but
well, when
anyway.
Originally that that beer was brewed for sustenance because of the lack of food. But I guess while we're on the topic, I'm gonna need some help from probably the two of you to help name my home brewery once I have it in, set up and running. So start to think about that. And any listeners out there, if you got any ideas, toss them my way. I'm up for anything, whether it's punny or funny or serious or whatever. It's not going to be serious because we're never serious here. But anyhow, I think we're going to wrap it up here. AJ, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And I hope to have you on a future episode. And actually, you are going to be on a future episode because we record all of our episodes ahead of time.
Spoiler alert.
Nothing's a secret. Yeah. So you'll be on, a future episode soon as well. Yes, soon. Yeah. So we won't tell you when, but we will tell you that it will be soon. So thanks for coming on. And do you have anything else to say before we wrap it up?
Just keep on going with your ministry, because I know when I've gotten the podcast, Catholic podcast, that was like really important to me. So I know you guys are reaching people. So just keep on with your ministry, because I know you're gonna touch people.
Well, thanks, and we hope to have you on, more often. You keep the conversation going and you make it interesting. So, thanks for coming on.
See, he's the engineer that's not like an engineer. So we're in a good place.
Yeah. You're like one of the personable engineers there's not too many of those out there. There's not too many of them out
music?
there.
Roll the clip,
get going.
For God's sakes.
But you can find us on encountermercy.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I promise one of these days we're going to start updating our social media. It's kind of been a long time, Father Andy.
We're not the best.
No, not at all. So we're going to get going on that. But thanks for listening.
As long as we're in this craziness, masses every day on our website as well as on Facebook, and I'm working on Instagram, maybe Instagram soon, but Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, a few different places, YouTube.
And the music is over, so we're done.